And welcome back into Hot Reads. It's time to talk NFL with Hall of Fame quarterback Troy Aikman. My name is Tom Vandervoort. And Troy, last week you took a look at the Green Bay Packers, obviously a very good football team. Another good one this week as the New Orleans Saints travel to Tennessee to take on the Titans. And this is a team that really looks to be rounding into form after an ugly loss to the St. Louis Rams. Drew Brees, a very dynamic, accurate quarterback, a lot of weapons on offense, a lot of similarities to the Packers. And I got to ask you, we know the San Francisco 49ers are out there, but do you see the Saints maybe getting another shot at the Packers at the end of the season heading into the Super Bowl?
Well, they sure could. You know, I mean, I think right now, looking at the NFC, I think the first-round bye is going to be important. I mean, it is every year for the most part. Of course, the Packers took the hard road last year, not only having to play in the wild card round, but also having to do it, you know, on the road right on the way through the Super Bowl. But you know, looking at the Saints, I have a lot of respect for them. I just think they're a very seasoned team. Obviously, having won a Super Bowl a couple of years ago, I have great admiration and respect for Sean Payton, and of course, the year that Drew Brees is having. Defense is somewhat of a concern, but I think you could say that about the Packers as well. But that'd be a heck of a matchup between these two teams.
Could you talk a little bit about Brees and Rodgers and that completion percentage of 70%? I mean, you know how hard it is to complete balls in this league, and that number just is really impressive to me. How do they do that?
Well, for a few reasons. One is they're very accurate with where they're throwing the ball. And, you know, having the opportunity, one of the things that I enjoy about my job is I get a chance to go around and watch these guys practice, you know, and watch the teams practice. And I remember a few years back, I went to New Orleans and I was watching Drew Brees, and here you've got a guy who's tremendously accurate with the football, and he was throwing the ball in areas to making his receivers adjust to the football, whether it was back shoulder throws or throws where they had to go down low in front of them to catch it. Without anybody defending these receivers, that's where Brees was putting the ball, and he was getting his guys acclimated to making adjustments with the ball in flight. And that's what we're seeing, whether it's from the Saints or certainly from the Green Bay Packers. We see it from Tom Brady. These quarterbacks have gotten so adept at putting the ball where the defender can't make a play on it. And then most importantly, you know, these receivers are making the adjustments required to make a play on the ball.
A very impressive thing. Now, down in your neck of the woods, Jason Garrett, Cowboys coach, always a lot of pressure on the Cowboys coach and quarterback, obviously, as you know, and a lot of controversy about how they lost that game to the Cardinals last week, some clock management issues. And just in that particular case, can you talk a little bit about managing the clock at the end of the game? What's the responsibility of the coach? What's the responsibility of the quarterback? And how was that kind of botched at the end of the Cardinals game?
Well, what's interesting about the Cowboys game is, and really I guess for any game, it's easy for us to stand on the sidelines, and even for me to be in the booth and say, here's what should happen, here's what they should have done. And not that that means that you're not always right when you say those things, but we don't have all the information. And so in that Cowboys game, I thought it was interesting listening to Jason Garrett in the post-game press conference and not really explaining what exactly happened or what the mechanics were that were in place. It sure seemed to me that the Cowboys weren't aware of having two timeouts. Otherwise, I think you burn that timeout, you save the last timeout for your field goal team, but if you had used a timeout right away, then you're capable, if you make that decision, of running another play. Now, there are those, and Jason was one that said this, that, well, if you run the ball and you lose yardage or you drop back to pass, you take a sack, now you take yourself out of field goal range, which happened earlier in that ball game. So at the end of the day, even if they had called timeout, you know, would they have tried to get more yardage or would they have just tried to position the ball? I don't know, but it sure seemed like an opportunity lost.
Yeah. Does the fact that he calls the plays and is thinking about what play to call next change at all the clock management situation? Does it make it more challenging for him to manage that aspect of the game?
Well, I think so. I mean, there's a number of coaches in this league that are, you know, Sean Payton for one, Mike McCarthy in Green Bay, but there's other guys in this league, Norv Turner in San Diego, that call the plays and are also the head coach. And that's a lot on your plate. Now, when you've not been a head coach before, and then you're put in that position, I think for the most part, guys handle those situations very, very well. But there's a lot of things. Clock management, I think, is probably one of the most underrated aspects And it takes a lot of time really studying it and putting yourself in a position to be successful when you get into those moments in the game. And never has it been more important than it has here over the last 10 years or so, because the games, as we see each and every week, are one-possession games, late with just minutes to play in the game.
Now, bigger picture, talk about putting your team in a position to be successful. And again, this is probably a product of being in such a high-profile position, but a lot of people are saying Jason Garrett has a bigger issue, not just this one game, but that he mismanaged the Patriots game, that he had problems managing the Lions game. Is there a bigger issue for Jason Garrett as a Cowboy follower? Should I be concerned with how he manages the game overall?
I don't think so. The nature of this business is when you lose, there's a lot of things that are then, dissected and scrutinized. They beat the Miami Dolphins on Thanksgiving. They beat the Washington Redskins. They beat the San Francisco 49ers, basically in similar situations to where it was the last possession. They had to make a play, to kick a field goal, against the Dolphins and the Redskins to win. They were in a position to do that. They made the kick. Would we be talking about this if they had made the field goal the second time to win the game? Yeah, I think maybe we would be addressing it. It would certainly have a little different content, to that discussion. But I guess at the end of the day, no matter who you look at or what exactly happened, Jason Garrett, clock management, calling the timeout, not calling the timeout, do you try to get more yardage? At the end of the day, players have a job to do. Defensively, they didn't make a stop in overtime. It was not good defensively. And then other than that, they didn't make the field goal the second time. They didn't execute it. So I think that everybody within that organization certainly has an element of responsibility as to why they lost that game.
Gotcha. Now, I'm often confused, Troy, and I'm very confused about Tim Tebow and another come-from-behind win. Denver looking like they've got a great chance to make the playoffs. And I got to ask you, I'm a bit surprised by his performance. A great touchdown-to-interception ratio, 10-1, obviously a big key. But a lot of the other stats just aren't that competitive with quarterbacks in the league. How surprised are you by what Tebow's been able to do in Denver?
Well, I'm pretty surprised. I'll be honest with you. I thought he did play better on Sunday. I was able to watch a little bit of that game, and some of his mechanics, it looked to me, were better, and he was seeing the field a little bit better, which is to be expected. I mean, these guys are under an intense microscope right away, and I think it's because of so many of these young quarterbacks coming in and having success. So right from the beginning, there were question marks as to how Tim Tebow, now obviously he's not a rookie, but as to how he was going to be able to perform and to really get acclimated to the NFL and seeing things and the disguises and what defenses are trying to do. You have to get out on the field and play. And so we've seen, I believe, improvement, here over the last 5-6 games. Now, is that going to be enough? I don't know. There's a part of me that still thinks that when this season ends, however it ends for the Denver Broncos, that John Fox and John Elway are probably going to still be standing there saying, I don't know if this is the guy for us. Is that fair? I don't know. I think that there's a tendency for all of us to say, hey, all that matters is winning football games. And at the end of each Sunday, that really is all that matters. But then when you go in and you evaluate your team, how do we get better? Then individual performances are then scrutinized as to who do we replace and where do we have to improve. The one thing that Tim Tebow has done is he's gotten that team to believe. And that's a big part of being a leader and being the quarterback of your football team. The defense is playing better with him at quarterback too. So I tip my hat to him. I'm proud of him for what he's been able to do. I just don't know that at the end of the day it's going to be enough for him to go into next season uncontested as the franchise quarterback.
Yeah, it's certainly a very, very interesting situation. I have to ask you, too, about what it takes to perform sort of in the clutch at the end of these games. What is it about a quarterback, and you've done it many times yourself, that allows you to perform in that kind of situation with somewhat of a sense of consistency?
Well, I'll tell you this, that if you're going to win games in this league, as I touched on a moment ago, you better be pretty good in those situations, and you better embrace it, because that's, you play for 58 minutes, and then it comes down to who's going to be able to make the play in the last two to win. And and that's where he's been really, really good. I mean, he obviously has a great deal of confidence in his ability. If given an opportunity in a game that's close, he believes very strongly, as he should, because he's done it. He did it in college, and now he's done it in the pros, that he's going to find a way to win. And you have to, though, give credit to that defense as well, because there's been games this year that he's been able to win and that team's been able to win, that if you were to play that poorly offensively, not just him, I'm talking about the offense in general, you know, you don't have a chance to come back and win those games late. Yet the defense has been able to keep them in it. They certainly did last week against the Minnesota Vikings with the big plays that they made. And you know, so that's been the biggest thing that I've been able to see, is just his ability to rally the team, and then the enormous confidence that he has, as well as those other players, that they're going to be able to pull it out.
Yeah, very interesting. The power of belief, maybe, with Tim Tebow. All right, Troy, man, thank you so much. Appreciate your time today, and we'll catch up with you next week.
All right, thanks, Tom.